Welcome to another recording of Purpose Maker. I'm the host, Dr. Wegmann. Purpose Maker, I call it a midlife wisdom podcast, and today my guest is Ben Manthei. Ben's very special to me, so this conversation is going to be really, really fun. Ben's also semi-retired from a company called Redi-Rock International. So we'll get into some of that and some of Ben's history and what we're going. Welcome, Ben. Happy to have you.
Thank you, Michael.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. So a lot of my podcasting is about talking to the midlife crowd and particularly life. And life can be challenging. It can have its ups. It can have its downs. Sitting down with you and getting an hour plus of your time is going to be amazing. So give us a little history about the family and get us up to speed on how you are where you are today.
Yeah, good. Thank you. So my grandparents came from Germany in 1902 as young teenagers, and they moved to Petoskey, Michigan, of all places, and got married. They settled in a little house in the country, which now is across from Bay Harbor, for those of you from Petoskey, about a mile up in the hills from Bay Harbor. And so my father was the first generation born in America. So I'm second generation. Our kids were the third generation. And I still live in the original homestead that my grandparents came from and settled in Germany. Now it's been added on every direction multiple times. So, but it's in the country on 40 acres, and it's been a great place to raise a family.
All right. So how many siblings did you have?
So there's 7 siblings in my family.
7 siblings.
Yeah.
And then how many of them are involved with the current Manthei business?
Yeah. So the youngest 3 sons teamed up and started a business together. And then early on after that, we teamed up with 3 of our cousins. And so 6 of us have been partners in business most our whole career.
And that's from like maybe late 20s, early 30s? In
our ages?
Age? Yeah.
Well, it was really right after each of us graduated from college.
And that's kind of
when we started.
What was the first business venture that you guys really took on?
Yeah, interesting. So when my grandparents came as teenagers, got married, they were poorest of the poor. and they started, they were subsistence farmers.
Just growing for themselves, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what they brought to America was a strong work ethic that they had, and they brought faith. And that was the starting point to our family story. And then my father and his brother started farming, first in beans, then in strawberries. And they became very successful strawberry farmers. And that launched them into their first business, trying to build berry crates into the wood business and eventually into the veneer business. So that was the first business that my father and his brother started.
Did they actually get into the veneer themselves?
Yeah. Yes, okay. They did.
So Manthei has a veneer mill now.
Yeah.
Right? And then how much has that grown?
Well, so
and for the people that don't know what it is, what is veneer?
Yeah. So okay, when you build berry boxes, back then they would put them in small 1-quart wooden boxes. It's very thin wood. Veneer is like less than an 1/8 inch thick veneer that they would build these berry boxes with. And so they were trying to build boxes for their berries, and they bought the wrong equipment and couldn't make it work. They put it in their barn, this equipment, and a salesman came through about a year later and said, "What are you doing with veneer equipment in your barn?" They said, "Oh, we're trying to make berry boxes. We couldn't make it work." He says, "Let me show you how to make it work." The long story short, he taught them how to start making veneer. and they transitioned into the veneer business, and that was their whole career from then on.
So what is the veneer business in the trade world?
So, yes. So it grew from berry boxes to making hardwood face veneer, which is if you have a 4x8 sheet of plywood, there's construction grade plywood for roofing, but then there's furniture grade plywood that has high end, it looks like maple and oak, very high end veneer that they build cabinetry with, or door skins. And that's what they make.
That's what they got into.
Yes.
Okay. So from there, the business expanded more.
Yeah,
Right.
it expanded, and long story short, near the end of their career, the veneer plant burnt to the ground.
Oh, geez.
And my father and his brother were ready to retire, and they said, "Hey, we don't want to rebuild this thing, but if the next generation wants to take it over, we'll help you get started, but you guys take it from there." And so
that's your generation.
Yeah. So it transitioned. Gen 1 built the first veneer plant. And when we were young, just taking off, is when it transitioned to Gen 2.
Okay. And so I know about the veneer mill. When did you start getting into construction, concrete? Because if you know the title of this podcast, it's Concrete Visions.
Yeah. So what happened, really, in all honesty, my father and his brother were German, and you've heard of the hard-headed Germans. They, late in their career, started battling a little. And there was a time, almost 10 years, when they quit speaking.
Oh, wow.
And so they kind of split. They were still partners, but they weren't getting along real well.
They were not happy with each other.
Yeah. So then when Gen 2, their sons came along, my uncle's side moved to California, and they started a little business in building resort parks. And our side of the family started, my father, when he retired at the mill, and he couldn't just sit around. So he bought a little 5-yard dump truck, and he brought a little real tiny loader and a little dozer, and he would do little driveways. And I was his only operator at 13. I was his main bulldozer operator.
Oh, wow.
So I would almost be running dozers in summertime when I wasn't in school. And I like to joke and say I ran dozers by day, and by night I'd come home and play with little things in the sandbox. I was running 2 lines. You know, you're still a kid and you're doing a man's job.
And you're doing work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any of that DNA that doesn't let you sit around?
Oh, my wife would say I'm type A. I'm either wide open, full bore, or I'm asleep on the couch.
That's the only 2 ways to go, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So then did you end up taking over that little construction business?
So what happened was, as my brother Mark graduated from college, Michigan Tech, as an engineer, my brother Jim was halfway through college, construction engineering, and I was just graduating from high school. And summer was coming up that summer. And so my father said, "Come on, Ben, we're going downstate." So we went down, and we drove by this little, someone was selling a crusher. Kuzda was his name. And he had a gravel crusher. Well, my father had a piece of property. It was a farm, and there was a little hole where they took some fill to build a ramp up to the barn, and it had gravel. And my father bought it. It was 80 acres. And he said, "You know, that property has gravel. Someday that'll be valuable." And so we're driving downstate, and he goes by this gravel crusher equipment, old beat up equipment. And we turned around, went back, and he said, "Hey, maybe we should buy this little gravel crusher. And when the boys come home this summer," he said, "you'll have something to do." So we looked at it, and there was a gravel crusher. There was a old dragline crane that fed it. And there were 2 dozers there, a little one and a big one. And he says, "Well, Ben, let's buy all 3 of these, but which dozer should we buy?" Now, remember, I was a junior in high school, but I had been running dozers, little dozer.
Yeah, so you had an idea.
So I said, "Well, Dad, that's a no-brainer. Buy the big
Big
one.
one. Oh, yeah. We have a little one.
So it was a D7 Caterpillar, an old hand clutch, a little pony engine, gas engine that started the big diesel engine.
Oh, wow.
It was cable. It was like almost an antique. Anyways, we bought it. And then, so my brother Mark came home for the summer, my brother Jim, and my dad said, okay, boys, I don't know how to do it, but get out there and see if you can make some gravel. So he never even came with us. We spent all summer. We had the biggest argument of our life. We're standing out there by this crusher. None of us knew the first thing about crushing. The argument was, which end of the machine do we dump the gravel in at?
To get it started.
Of course, my brother Mark, he won the argument. He was the graduate engineer, just graduated, right out of college.
Uh-huh.
We spent all summer and we made 2,000 cubic yards of gravel. Now, today we do that in a day.
Oh my
But
goodness.
back then it was a summer's project. It was always,
and that was a lot of gravel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember the first truck, Northland Construction came, they had blue equipment trucks, and they came in to buy the first load. And we said, whoa, we're in business. Those are humble beginnings, very humble.
I love it.
And that started us into construction, heavy equipment construction. We started with crushing. Then that moved, we're trying to sell the gravel. And so then we bought a wash plant, which separated stone from sand. So now we had two, not like gravel, but we had stone and sand. And so to sell that, we went to the ready-mix producer in town and said, would you be interested in buying stone and sand? That's what you make ready-mix with.
Yeah.
And that launched us into ready-mix, and that grew to eventually 120 employees and 3 ready-mix plants and building roads. And we've graded airports. We've built bridges.
Oh man.
It's just hard work.
It's a lot of hard. Sounds like a lot of fun projects.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite memories of growing up with your brothers and not crushing gravel?
Well, what's interesting? We were a typical family. We would fight and then we'd, be best of friends. You know what I mean? And
happens in my house all the time.
But my older brother, Jim, next brother up, he was 3 years older. And, when you're 12 and they're 15, I mean, they're way ahead of you.
Yeah,
and
they're cool.
He was my hero. He was next year he's driving to school and I'm still a little kid. And so I really looked up to my brother. If he had gone down the wrong trail,
I would have followed.
I would have followed.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
Thank Jim.
Jim went down the right trail,
Yeah.
and I was proud of him. I wanted to be like him.
Nice.
Growing up.
Yeah. No, that's a good one. So we talked a little bit about Redi-Rock International on your introduction. That's a big project that kind of grew out of the history of everything you've explained so far. So how did the concept of Redi-Rock come about? And then how big did that grow?
Well, I'll tell it 2 different ways. And then
Okay.
we can back up if you want. So it grew out of the ready-mix division. And we were looking, how do we sell more ready-mix? And this would have been the year just before Bay Harbor started, which was 1998.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Bay Harbor started about the year 2000. By the way, Bay Harbor is a big development, 5 miles long in Petoskey, world class.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
$1
Yep.
million to $20 million homes on Lake Michigan and golf courses and marinas.
Yeah,
And
it's very pretty.
we ended up doing a lot of their infrastructure work. We had crews working there almost 7 years just straight. Well, they had a need. They needed to build some retaining walls. And we didn't have anything in retaining walls, but my brother Jim said, we do have in our ready-mix division, we send 10 yards out in ready-mix in a truck. And a lot of times they will order more than they need because they don't want to run out. They'll send a yard and a half back at the end. And we just throw it away. And finally he said, this is good product. Why would we throw it away? Why don't we make it into a product we can resell? Coming from the family value of waste nothing.
That's right.
So
That would have been from subsistence farming.
substance farming,
Yeah.
you don't waste anything.
Right.
And here's this good product coming back. Let's make it a product we can sell. So my brother Jim came up with the idea of making of steel form, a big form, and we would put a plastic liner in it and then pour concrete in it, and it would make concrete. Think of 1-ton Lego blocks that interlock together that look like natural rock. So he built the first form, and then we built the very first wall was at Bay Harbor, this big development. And I remember it took a year and a half for Jim to figure this out, build the first form. We built the first wall. And then he said to my brother Mark and I, come on, guys, look at what we have here. So we went out, and I remember saying, and I didn't know what I was even saying at the time. Now, this would have been mid-career already.
Right.
My halfway through my career.
Yeah.
And I said, Jim, that is an amazing product, all out of waste concrete. That's a $10 million idea, I remember saying.
Mhm.
And Jim comes up with 100 ideas a year. And he says, well, thanks. He said, now I'm kind of bored with this idea, and I'm off to another idea. And I said, no,
He's bored because he's been working on it a year and a half.
year and a half, and we're just getting excited. And he's already at the end of his excitement. He's off to the next thing. And I had been the first half of my career, I'd been working in our construction company.
On the bulldozer.
Yeah. Well, then I was leading all the grading crews.
Yeah.
And my brother Jim led all the underground development crews. And my brother Mark did all the crushing, oversaw the crushing and ready mix. I was ready for a change in my life because I had been molding the elements, I called it. And there was part of me that wasn't being used. My negotiation skills, I mean, I was learning it, but I didn't have a chance to use my marketing and a lot of things. And so I saw potential in this new product. Let's take this on the road and see if we can sell it to other companies. And Jim said, no, I'm tired. I'm off to the next thing. So I said, I'll do it. So I volunteered. By default, I became the president, and we started a little division that spun off, and the rest is history. I mean,
and that little division's called Redi-Rock.
Redi-Rock, and it grew to
how big?
License. We sell forming equipment, and we license it to precast companies in every city. So now we're in about 48 states, and then it grew to over 20 countries.
Wow.
And now that's the story. Now, really, the story behind the story is really
this is why you're on the podcast.
To me,
this is what we want to hear.
Is what's more interesting. So what happened was, now again, I'm going to go back to mid-career.
Okay.
And I was sitting in my I have a hot tub, and I'd love to sit in it at night. And I'd crank the heat really high, and the kids were little, put them to bed, and I'd jump in the hot tub, and I'd pour a big thing of water, and I'd stay till I drank the whole water. And I was thinking through this one summer. Now I'm halfway through my career. What do I want from the second half? First half was really good. Got married, graduated college, got married, 3 wonderful kids growing, started business with my brothers. Actually, we started another business in California, multiple businesses with our cousins. What do I want from the second half? Do we just want to double anything, or is there something more? Is there something more? And I kept thinking. Along about that time, a friend of mine, a business acquaintance from Dallas, Texas, calls me up that summer, says, Ben, I'm going to this seminar, and I think you need to come with me. I said, well, first of all, I said, where is it? Well, it's in Breckenridge, Colorado. I'm thinking, that's a cool place. I've never been in the mountains in the summer. What's the seminar? What's it about? What's it called? He said it's called Quest for Significance. I thought, whoa, I don't even know what that means other than somehow it's scratching right where I'm itching. What is life all about?
Right.
Quest for significance. So 2 brothers, myself and a cousin, we fly out to this conference, and it was about 100 business guys. And the speaker gets up front. I didn't know him from Adam at that time.
Mm-hmm.
He's become a close friend since then. He said, okay, you guys are all business guys.
Just the guy I know.
This guy's, his name was Dave Hanna.
Dave Hanna. I've met him. We were out
Yeah.
in California.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he got up to speak. He said, now you guys are all business guys. You're used to doing business plans. We're here to challenge you. We think you're thinking too small. And my first thought, it made me mad. I said, he doesn't know us from Adam. We just did our 2-year plan. We just did our 5-year plan.
Yeah, these are big plans.
It might be too small for him. This was scary big for us.
Right.
And he went on to say, we want you to think big enough that it will impact someone's life 1,000 years from now.
Oh.
That's what I
Yeah.
stopped and said, whoa, we're thinking big, but we're not thinking
That was a 5-year plan.
we're not thinking 1,000 years.
Yeah.
I tried to think 1,000 years back. I couldn't name one person.
No.
You go back to year 1,000. Can you name anyone?
No.
Now, you want little us to do something today that'll impact someone in the year 3,000?
Hmm.
Think about it.
Well, the next question, how do you do that?
How do you do that?
Yeah.
Of course, what he said, you can probably guess. He said, if you can impact someone where they will spend eternity after they die,
You've impacted them in 1,000 years.
1,000 years and beyond.
Yeah.
And so they said, you guys do these business plans, you're business guys. We want you to develop an eternal business plan for your company that will impact them 1,000 years. And he went on to say, we don't want your money. Now, I think they did want our money. It was a ministry that put this
Sure.
seminar on. They said, we don't want your money. We want your life. And life is an acronym. LIFE.
Oh yeah, Ben. Yeah.
That's what we've talked about.
Yes.
In our
Yeah, we're gonna share how our stories cross here after you get done with this.
So they went on to say, we don't want your money. We want your life. Life is for your labor. I knew what labor, L stands for labor. I knew what that was. I is for your influence. I didn't even know what influence was other than when I was 12, I made my little sister Ruth run away from home 3 times. I must have influence.
Poor Ruth. Ruth,
But
I'm going to apologize on behalf of Ben because I know you're going to listen to this. We love you, Ruth.
but Ruth and I have since become good friends. But see, I was the youngest of 5 boys, but I had a little sister, and she got babied by my mom.
And you have to deal with her.
And I got just pounded on by 4 big brothers.
Uh-huh.
And so I took it out on Ruth. And so I said, I know I have interest, have influence, but I have to learn to use it for good.
Properly. Sure.
Yeah. So that was it caught my attention.
Yeah.
So labor, influence. F is for our finances. I knew what it meant to give finances. We've been giving ever since we were little, which I want to come back to how I learned that lesson.
Okay.
As a 10-year-old kid.
Oh.
And F is finances. E is for our expertise. And so they said, we want you to develop an internal business plan, team up with us, make a 4-year commitment, and come and use your life. Let's go change this world. I get goosebumps up my back every time I even think of this.
Sure.
And so they marched. They had staff working around the world in this place called the 1040 window.
Mm-hmm.
If you've never heard of the 1040 window, it's between the 10th parallel on the globe and the 40th parallel. It's the least evangelized people. There are people that have never heard the gospel message. The least reached people in the world. It's basically North Africa and South Asia.
Mm.
And, there's it's Buddhist, it's Muslim. They've never heard the name Jesus.
Right.
They don't have hope. They're looking for hope in life, and they don't have it. And so they said, team up with us. So we made a commitment, which we didn't have. But we said, they sent these little cards out, and go out and at the break, and there's a big map of the world, pick a spot, team up for 4 years with us, come and bring your expertise and help us, bring your influence, bring your life. So we made a commitment. We put on the card, do not spend this money. We don't have it. But if we don't make the commitment,
then we'll never get it.
Well,
Yeah.
if we get it, we'll forget all about the seminar because we want to buy a bigger boat and we want that big, we might buy a big house or 3 or 4 houses.
Sure.
No, we'll make them if and when God blesses us.
Yeah.
We're going to team up with you.
Well, Ben, that's where a lot of people get off track, is with the finances and the lifestyle that can come with that as it increases.
We're all vulnerable to that. But I'll tell you, that started when I was 10 years old.
Let me hear it.
So my father was in the veneer business and he wanted to teach me business at 10 years old. So he took me and we went down to the neighbors and we bought a cow of all things. We live in the country. And he said, Ben, I'm going to help you launch into business. Oh man, I'm 10 years old. I'm a businessman. What do? You're going to milk the cow, provide milk for the family every day, and you're in business. I said, wow, this is great. Well, little did I know, farming is very hard work.
Yes,
it's
it is.
24/7 every day, twice a day. You go out and you milk the cow. You got to clean the barn, water them, feed them hay. And, but I learned a work ethic. I learned quality control. I know at 10 years old what it's like when you're a little guy and that's a big cow and you're milking the cow and they want to step in the bucket.
Oh,
I know what goes in milk. To this day, I don't drink milk. I actually do, but now they do it much different than back then. But anyways, then what happened was 3 years in, I was 13. I'd been milking for 3 years. And I said, there's got to be a better way of business than this. And happiest day of my life happened to that point. My cow got sick and died.
Oh, Ben.
And I was thrilled. I said, okay, this launches me to the next chapter. And my dad had taught me along the way the principle of tithing. He said, okay, end of the month, I pay you $20. And when we go to church on Sunday, you put $2 in the collection plate. So I'd been doing that for 3 years.
Mm.
When my cow died, I was so thrilled. He paid me $20. I put $4 in the collection plate. I learned the difference between tithes and offerings. Tithes, God says, look, I'm going to bless you, but I want you to know where it comes from. Give a percentage back.
Yeah.
Offerings, you give from a joyful heart.
Mm.
And it's very different. One's more obligatory, one's more from a joyful heart.
Right.
And I was so happy I doubled it. And that principle I learned at 10 years old. Now, as the companies started growing, we started giving more and more and more.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally the missionaries came through and said, hey, you got to come to China and see where your money's going. We were supporting overseas missions. No, we're not. We don't have time to go to China. What are you talking about? You know what we got going at work?
Yeah, business is too busy.
And so he said, okay, well, how about 9 months from now? I'm going to go to Mongolia. We're doing some work there. And would you come with me? And I remember he challenged my cousin and I, and we had him at our house for dinner, the missionary and cousin of it. And he challenged us and we said, well, okay, maybe 9 months from now. And I was thinking 9 months from now, I'm going to forget about it. He's going to forget about it. He grabbed our hands and he held them in the air. My cousin and I, it was to Mongolia. He challenged us to come. He said, Mongolia, here we come. We all laughed. He left the next morning. We forgot all about it. 2 weeks later, we get in the mail non-refundable tickets to Mongolia 9 months from now with this note. You guys are far too conservative minded to let these tickets go to waste. We're going to Mongolia. Sure enough, 9 months later, we're on the plane going to Mongolia. And like you said, once you get the sand in your sandals of overseas missions, you'll never be the same. It changed our life. I don't think of those far away. I've been now to 35 countries.
Yeah.
Giving back. And I don't think of Mongolia or Russia. I think of the people's faces that I know I've engaged with. And it's made me view the world very different.
Yes. That's a viewpoint I don't think a lot of Americans have, is that making other people personable.
Yeah, they're real people.
They're real people. Yeah, traveling does a lot to you.
Yeah.
It definitely opens your eyes to what other people go through.
It's given us a purpose for our business.
Mm,
It's not, if your business grows as a businessman, business is no better gift than singing or anything else. It's just whatever God's gifted you with, how do we use it for good?
Yeah.
So I could go in a lot of areas in that area, but maybe.
Well, one area I'd like to go through is I call you a mentor. You've helped me a lot. You're definitely trying to help me with this purpose maker, which is a similar transition in my life that you're talking about in midlife, wanting to expand and become more.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Quest for significance.
It's a big one, especially when you feel like you have more inside of you,
Mm-hmm.
or you feel like God has called you to step up.
Mm-hmm.
The transition's particularly tough with me because I have a busy practice and I've got an obligation to a family. And so then trying to make, and I don't want it to be a complete transition out of something. I want it to be in addition to, because I really love what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really enjoy my practice and interacting with people the way I do. But you helped me put together, I think I put one over there for you. You helped me put together this little pyramid. And I had a concept that I had learned doing some work, being an advisor for the veteran suicide stuff. And we had come up with some really interesting ways of helping. And I was driving home one day, kind of asking myself, how does somebody get to the edge? How do they get to the point where they're deciding they don't want to be here? And it made me realize that most of the time people don't want to die. They want something inside of them to die. And so that's kind of how you get to that mentality. And then it's a rehearsed thought. It's not knee-jerk reaction. Someone doesn't have the thought and just act on it. They play it out over time, and then eventually they convince themselves the people here would be better off without them. Mm. That's how they make that kind of decision. So I'm driving home after talking to somebody that was right on the edge, asking myself, how do you get there? And an image popped in my head. It was a triangle with the TIP. And that's what I explained to you, the transition, the identity, and purpose. So what happens when somebody's getting to that point, they're going through one or more transitions in life that are very difficult. There's a loss of identity. Who am I? And there's a loss of purpose. And if you get that flywheel spinning fast enough, you get very confused. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of helped me get that from a thought into this. And I am proud to say that this actual pyramid has saved someone's life. Mm-hmm. This actual device somebody had. And the Midlife Wisdom podcast is coming from the LIFE, which you taught me. Mm-hmm. And those 4 ways of giving back, it's interesting. Purpose is always around us, but I think some people get confused and they think of purpose kind of like a piece of luggage, like I've lost my purpose. There's kind of an equation for purpose I've come up with. You have ethical living, you have worship, and you have service to others. You get those 3 things going and the purpose starts to emerge. Mm-hmm. And then what's interesting about the LIFE acronym, and you're talking about ways of giving back, but it actually blesses you as well. So it's a way to improve your own life. And it's one of the only ways to really interact and grow is through that service. Because you could have went the other path. Jim could have went down the wrong path. Or as your business grew substantially, you could have completely gone down a different road where it was yachts and big houses and jets and all those different things that a lot of people that come into some success end up doing. And our culture glorifies that a little bit. If you look on the social media, that's kind of like the main thing. So your help with me has been phenomenal trying to explain this. And this podcast is kind of born out of realizing Purpose Maker is coming together to help equip people with the tools, the wisdom, and the knowledge on how to navigate some of these life issues we go through.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been very influential with that. So I appreciate you sitting down and sharing some of this and talking over.
So, interesting enough, when you shared the tip method,
Mm-hmm.
we all go through transitions, positive or negative, and affects our identity. And if it affects it negatively, we lose our purpose in life.
We do.
And you were sharing that with me, and I said, "Wow, that is powerful because it's something we can all relate to."
Mm.
We've all gone through transitions. Positive, you get married. Negative, you get divorced or your mate dies.
Sure.
Very difficult.
Very difficult.
It affects your identity. Now, who am I? And what's my purpose in life? And if we don't figure out how to answer it, it can be a downward spiral. So I said, what a powerful way to explain it, Michael. How do we, then my marketing mind popped into gear.
Mm.
And I said, you could put that on paper, but I can't tell you how many things stack up papers on my desk. So I remember saying, I learned this a long time ago. If you can come up with a tangible product that represents an intangible concept, it's powerful.
Mm.
So we came up with together the triangle because
Yeah.
you can set it on your desk and nobody puts a paper on it and covers it up because it won't stay.
Right.
And it looks too good to throw away. And that's when you shared with me, you gave this to one of your clients.
Yep.
He put it in his pickup on the dash.
Yep.
And
he's still with us today.
And he was driving down the 2-track with a pistol on his
Mm-hmm.
thing out in the woods.
Contemplating
suicide.
Yep.
And he looked at that triangle and he said, you know what? I'm going through this transition. And it's really affecting my identity.
Yes, it is.
Who am I? I don't have any more purpose. But you shared with me that suicide is a permanent answer
to a temporary problem.
Problem. And he realized that.
Yep.
And he turned around, came back, and started talking to you.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
And Michael, I now put one of these in my truck. And I have it there. And people ask, what is that? And it's a way to share this concept. And can I share one story?
I would love to hear it.
About my wife's mom, Granny Rose. She was 93 when she died. The last 10 years, we built a little granny flat across from our driveway, 400 square feet. Really cute, but very small. She lived there for 10 years. And she had her independence, but she could come over and visit my wife, her daughter, 3 times a day if she wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, on Sundays, we'd take her to church. And I had a business friend of mine, sold his big business in Detroit, and he came up to Harbor Springs. I said, hey, come to church with us Sunday. So they did, he and his wife. And then we took him to lunch after church. We always take Granny Rose to church with us. So there was 5 of us now, my wife and I, this couple, and Granny Rose. And so we're at lunch, and my friend Greg turns to Granny. Granny, Granny's real upbeat and bubbly. And he says, Granny Rose, you raised your family here? Yep. 5 generations right here in Harbor Springs, she said. Man, what a wonderful place to raise a family. It's like, if I had lived up here and raised my family, it's like, you must have never hardly had a problem in the world. And she looks at him and she says, he's thinking he's this big business guy and she's
Detroit's rough, lots of issues down there.
She's this little granny just living the perfect life.
Uh-huh.
And she says, well, Greg, you're right about one thing. This is a good place to raise a family. But I wouldn't exactly say I've never had a problem. And I'll never forget, he says, Granny Rose, what problems could you have? And she said, well, was young. I got married, 3 little kids. Bam, bam, bam. My husband, he was out near the barn, and the tractor rolled over on the ramp and killed him right in front of one of our sons, which really affected him.
Sure.
Then she said, now I'm raising 3 kids by myself, trying to work, trying to raise 3 little kids. I take them up to a church picnic on the lake, and my oldest son drowns at the church picnic. And, oh, gosh. Then she says, 3 years later, I said, these kids need a dad. I remarried, and he dies.
Wow.
Then she said, I'm still raising 3 kids, and my house burned clear to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Granny, I had no idea. Then she says, I married the 3rd time, and that husband died. And about then, Greg says, Granny, if that happened to me, I would just curse God and die. I just want to die. Now, he was identifying with transitions.
Oh, big time.
That would affect my identity to the point where
I had no purpose.
I would just curse God and die.
Yeah.
I will never forget Granny's answer.
Ooh, let me hear it.
She said, curse God and die? She said, Greg, you have no idea. When I was going through that, God is the only thing that got me through it. How could I curse God and die? That's the only thing that got me through it. She said, I learned a lesson. He said, what did you learn? She said, when you're going through bad, difficult things, it's okay to feel sorry for yourself for a time. Now, this is her words, not mine. Someone who'd been through it. She said, you can feel sorry for yourself for a week, maybe 10 days. That's what she said. She said, then I would look out and I would find out someone who's struggling worse than me, and I would reach out to help. And as I helped them, it's how I got my purpose in life back through giving to others. Now, fast forward, now she's 93 and she died. And we're at the funeral, and I'm thinking, most people who are 93, their funerals are pretty small.
Sure.
All the friends are dead, gone.
Yep.
They're usually not in the greatest health. It's usually a very small funeral. So we go up to the funeral. 400 people showed up. Now, Granny Rose hardly ever had 2 dimes to rub together on her own. She was a multi-millionaire in friendships.
Oh, man.
Because she was using her influence. She was serving, giving back. And I said, that Granny, I didn't realize
the impact she had.
I mean, the impact until the end. And I looked back.
Right. And you knew her.
And interesting enough, we had I call it our foreign exchange student from Las Vegas, which isn't for
it's almost a foreign country.
For this culture, that's a foreign culture. And really great kid. And he's still here, and he's part of the family. But he lived with us for 1 year. And then he went off to college, and we kind of didn't see him for quite a while. And he showed up at Granny's funeral, and they had an open mic, and he got up. Now, this is Granny was really old, and he was a young kid living in our house. She's right across the driveway. He got up to speak and said, Granny was one of the biggest influences in his life. And he wanted to just be at the funeral and say thank you in whatever way he could.
Yeah.
That, and, she had a life of serving, loving, giving back to people.
That's definitely a testimony to God and to what he did in her life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I forgot to give you something. I had a present for you.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. You ready?
Present. Wasn't counting on that.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
So I got a cigar here, Ben. And this is for your ministry group, Holy Smokes. So I wanted to give you that as a thank you for being on the show. Has the Holy Smokes group met up here?
so Michael, we better explain this.
I
I don't
love
know
this.
your audience. So I didn't think we'd go here, but so I got to tell you,
We got to keep it real.
I got to tell you the genesis of this.
I love it. Yeah.
I sat on a ministry board for the military ministry of Campus Crusade. I was on their advisory board for 14 years, and it was led by General Abel,
Mm-hmm.
Air Force General.
Yeah.
He was one of the mentors of my life. He pushed me and stretched me to grow in ways I never knew I could. I ended up traveling around the world with him, and he taught me I can act. He pushed me into speaking.
Mm.
Incredible. Anyways, in his ministry, they work with the gateway cities of kids coming through ROTC and then into the military as officers. So like at Virginia Tech and different places are big ROTC.
So that's what my daughter's doing. ROTC
Yes.
Air Force.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So this ministry says, how do we reach young kids, freshmen coming into college, and stretch them spiritually? Well, how do you get the attention of young kids? They're on their own for the first time at college, away from home. So one of their staff came up with this idea. He says, Ben, be careful. You can't, I'm not going to use any names. You can't. Everybody wouldn't think this is a good tactic. But he said, how do you reach these kids? He started what he called the Holy Smoke gang, or the Holy Smoke thing. Everybody, and it was just guys, because he was a male staff member, and so they would challenge the guys, freshmen coming in. Okay, come on, we're going to build a campfire. Here's the rules: everybody gets a Cohiba cigar. Just stay till it's done. We'll talk about anything you want, and it's just build friendships, and it's a place you can talk, and anything they talk about stays in that group. You don't talk about it with anybody else. Well, a lot of kids don't have anybody they can really open up to. They can talk sports and weather, but they can't talk about what are the issues in my life.
Their struggles, right?
Well, a good leader can ask the right questions. And eventually, once you build a relationship, you can really talk about some issues where these kids are at and help them come alongside, walk with them through it. So last winter, we go out west every winter for 3 months. And I started my version of Holy Smoke Gang. And I intentionally invited the full spectrum of people, all the way from, we had some counselors, some professional doctors who are counselors.
Mm-hmm.
We had a worship leader at a chapel. We had a pastor, and we had some business guys, and we had some guys like me, just some schmucks.
Mm-hmm.
And so we could test this out. And, there was any given night, there was probably 8 of us, but over the winter, there was probably 16 that came and went.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, I had at least 3, if not 4 guys come to me and say, Ben, you have no idea how this has changed my life. I don't have anybody I can talk with. One guy was struggling through a divorce, many issues. Guys just need a place to go. And
Yes.
a lot of people, when they're struggling, they won't go to church.
Mm.
So how do we come alongside them? So we came up with Holy Smokes, and actually, don't tell anyone, but I did start a chapter
Up here.
So I'll tell you a funny story. So we went down and got some cigars.
Uh-huh.
And of course, the first night, half of us got sick on them because they're awful. These things are awful.
Uh-huh.
And we knew nothing about cigars, so we go down, friend of mine, the cigar shop. I shouldn't be telling the story.
This is good. Well, you're already into it now, Ben.
So anyway,
and by the way, I actually do like a good cigar.
so well, we got some Brick House cigars, and if you remember, there's a song way back in the 90s, maybe Brick House. All I knew that name, and so I said, "Oh, Brick House, isn't that a song?" Well, I knew that was a song, and there was a chaplain there. He says he knew every word of the song, and it's not a good song. Anyways, and we all laughed because that's what we're joking about. And he says it was funny. Anyways, thank you.
You're welcome.
All I can say is thank you, Michael.
There you go. That'll be for your next ministry.
You might want to take this section out.
I'm gonna splice this to the front so nobody misses it. It's the best part of it. Our friendship is pretty interesting. I don't know if you remember this, but we actually attended church for 8 years together and didn't even know each other.
True. I think there were 2 services, and maybe we went to different ones.
That was probably part of it. I do remember seeing you and Nancy there at different times.
But yeah, I was shocked when I heard we both went there for 8 years.
I know. Well, it wasn't until we both went to the new church.
Yeah.
That we kind of, they were like, oh, I remember you from the old church.
Yeah.
So it kind of worked like that. One of my favorite memories with you is the dirt bike ride we took.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You remember that?
Yes.
We took a 2-track dirt bike ride all the way. That was a long one, too.
You know what I remember is I was really hurting with my knee, and I was limping. And you came alongside me and said, Ben, you need to work on this. And thank you. Michael, you have impacted not only me as a doctor, but you've helped multiple members of our family, including my son and our granddaughter, and in tremendous ways. So I have the highest respect for what you do.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I remember how I met the Manthei family. It's pretty funny. I did a talk at a small bookstore downtown Petoskey when I first moved to town. I've been in practice 21 years now. So it would have been year 1.5 or so. And the talk was Eating God's Way. Put an ad in the paper, talked to this bookstore. It wanted like 15 seats. I get there, bookstore is kind of not too crazy. We had the little deli section was kind of roped off for us to do it. I had 70 people show up to the talk.
Wow.
And the bookstore was not happy with that crowd. The person that came to that was Marlis. So that was my first meeting of the Manthei family, and it was Marlis, and then it kind of grew from there. So
yeah, my sister-in-law. Yep.
And then Gwen, and it's been a long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I appreciate all that stuff. When we're talking about these transitions, are there any personal transitions or personal struggles you've been through that are?
What's interesting, most of us learn more through our mistakes than through our successes. I mean, people say, oh my, look at this success or that. Most of our successes are just hard work. I want to back up and say, it's not because how bright, like my successes are, not how bright I am, because there's people much brighter, probably most brighter, sharper, better at what they do. On one hand, we work very hard at it, but I want to say, on the other hand, we've been blessed in spite of ourselves. God has just been good to us, and God is there. We don't always see it. And I can tell you, I've had 2 things through my career at work that could have been major crises, could have sunk our company. And we had an option. How do you deal with it? Do you keep it under the wraps, or do you proactively, this is let people know, here's a problem we have, we're working on it, and you work through it. And both times after much struggle, we said, we're going to go proactive and
Work through it.
tell people where we're at, here's the problem, and work through it. And in both cases, we came out much stronger on the other side.
Mhm.
And it was way better to address it openly. One was both of them were quality control issues that we came up with in our products that we didn't know were there. But once we learned it, what do? You
You
can't.
have to correct it.
You have to deal with it.
Mhm.
And we did. And then,
That's the honorable way to do it.
and you know what? God knows how to get our attention to teach us. And most of us learn slow, so it's painful. And he knows how to get
That
it.
is such a true statement.
So after we had these quality control issues, came through it, and then I was 50 years old.
Mhm.
I just came off the most financially best year
Ever
ever,
at that point.
hitting all these new milestones.
Mm.
Went in, I said at 50, I hardly ever been sick a day in my life. At 50, go in and get your baseline test, because for the future, you know how you're doing health-wise.
Right.
So I go to the doctor, joking with him. He calls me back a week later and says, Ben, you better come in and sit down. So I come in. What do you got? Ben, I don't know how to tell you this. You have late-stage cancer. He says, I'm an older doctor. I've never seen anybody make it through it, find it at this stage. So basically, go home, get ready, you're done.
This is what you're hearing at 50
At 50 from the
with
doctor.
3 young kids,
They were middle-aged.
middle age,
Well, not middle-aged. They were college age, high school and college.
high school and college.
And I tell you, that hit me like a ton of bricks. And I didn't feel a thing physically.
Mm.
It wasn't
There was no warning or indication.
nothing. It came
Nothing.
out of the blue. God was getting my attention. And I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep, all emotionally for a month. And that's when my wife, a team of 2 and with 3, a cord cannot be broken. The Bible talks about,
Yeah.
husband, wife, and if you're grounded with God, it's a team of 3.
Yeah.
And when I couldn't do a thing, my wife went to work. She found a world-class doctor at Mayo Clinic, and not that they can fix everything, but she found it. I went over there, had surgery. Here, funny story. Now it's 20 years later, and I'm still cancer-free. That's not the biggest miracle of my life. The biggest miracle happened 2 days before surgery at Mayo Clinic. And I've spent 2 months at Mayo working through it.
Right.
But it happened 2 days before surgery. And I couldn't sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night. I was such a basket case. I couldn't even pray or ask for healing. I was just a basket case.
Right.
And I woke up. Well, I couldn't sleep, but I'm rolling around and I'm praying. And I said, God, look, I realized there's something worse for me than having cancer. I had lost my peace in life. I knew what it meant to feel like you're walking in the center of God's will, doing what he's called you to do, having success or learning lessons. And now I lost my peace. Like, where are you, God? And my prayer was, all I ask, would you walk with me through this? If I go in and the doctor gets it all, cancer, and then I guess I'm going home to Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Mayo Clinic's in Minnesota.
So
going home to Michigan. If the doc can't get it all, well, I guess I'm going home to heaven.
Different direction.
Either way, I'm going home.
Mm.
And it was totally out of my hands. I surrendered it. I had been trying to get to a point of peace on this, and I couldn't get there. I went to sleep. I woke up with an appetite. Remember, I hardly ate a thing. I lost 25 pounds. I hadn't been eating. I woke up at total peace. God gave me my peace back. I went into surgery. That's a miracle in my life. I went into surgery. Doctor did his thing. A day later, I come out all the drugs. And I said, so doc, did you get it all? He said, he was mad. He said, this has never happened to me. And he was one of the top doctors there.
Mm-hmm.
He said, my staff lost your records. You know, they look for clear margins when they do surgery, see if the cancer went beyond. They lost your records. I don't know if we got it all or not.
Jeez.
I said, doc, you know, it probably doesn't even matter anymore. I said, whatever it is, it is.
Right.
He said, go home and we'll keep looking. So I go home and he calls me back a week later and says, hey, I got good news and I got bad news. I said,
boy.
What's the good news? Let's start with something good. Well, the good news is we found your records.
Okay.
I said, oh, shoot. What's the bad news? Couldn't get it all. Went beyond. He said, you got to heal up for 3 months and come back and have 8 weeks of radiation. You know, God walked with me through that. And I'm not saying it was perfect, but I mean, there are times when, if you're a type A temperament, I have a plan A I'm doing. I have a plan B in my back pocket, and I have plan C and D if I have to get to them. On how I had no way of dealing with this.
You had no control.
No control.
So.
And in hindsight, looking back, what a beautiful time of learning. You know, I've heard it said, you know, when all you have is God, God is all you need. That was just a saying.
Yeah.
When I was there,
it was very real.
It is all you need.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm going to struggle, and I've had struggles since then again, but I know now God will walk with us through whatever. And at one day we walk all the way into heaven. And some days I wake up and, you know, my kids don't like me to talk about it, but it's going to be good when we get to heaven. And we just all want to get there together. You know, that's what making our life count in someone's life 1,000 years from now.
Sure.
We want our family to be there. We want our loved ones to be there. We want others
to be there.
We don't want to miss it.
Right.
Now is our time to prepare. We're preparing for eternity. And this is a crucial time. We can't do it once we're dead. You can only do it while you're alive. Get ready. So as I get older, now I'm trying to figure out, you know, we've transitioned our businesses to the next generation. They've got their hand on the sticks.
They're working them.
We don't.
No.
But we have what a position of influence we still have. That we can encourage others along. And that's what I'm trying to learn, how to be a mentor. I'm learning up where some of us that have entrepreneurial.
So am I your guinea pig mentoree? Is that, are you getting all your problems out on me, Ben?
I'm learning more from you than you've learned from me, Michael.
Oh, well, one project I know you've been working on pretty hard in town here is that Pine Pond. So that's a big issue. The affordable housing. I don't know if you've seen the updated numbers up here, but the median home price for Emmett County, Michigan is now up to $897,000. That is out of reach for a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people. And there's a lot of factors influencing that, but it's very difficult because short-sighted growth or planning doesn't realize that what it's going to do is create a whole generation that there's a gap, and that gap is nobody's here. So for the time being, it's fine. Baby boomer generation's big. Lots of people have money. They can be here. But as that starts to move out, you don't have anything coming in behind that. So could you tell me a little bit about the Pine Pond, what you're working on, and how big this issue and project is.
Yeah. So Pine Pond, we've had different, it's a housing project, 128 homes we're in process of building. And most of the builders in this resort market of Petoskey, Harbor, Charlevoix area, most of the builders are building for the big resort homes. That's where all the money is. And we've been blessed, with a lot of employee team members that work here, and they can't find housing. So we started working almost 5 years ago now on one of our gravel pits that we've had for 50 years. And it was a big hill when we started. Now we dug the gravel out and there's a big pond.
It's called a reverse hill.
Yeah. And it went into the water table and it's a big pond. And so we've reclaimed that and we've put in the infrastructure, and it'll be 128 homes. And we want to target perhaps at least half of those homes for more the attainable housing.
Sure.
So
yeah, we call it workforce housing.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we call it attainable.
Mm-hmm.
It's there's 3 levels of homes, starting at 170, 175,000, and about 1,000 square feet. But all of our homes have front porches for community, garages, and a backyard living space.
Right.
Because we're up north and it's a beautiful time in the summer. So they're manufactured homes, but then we stick built garages and all the patios, porches, that type of thing. And so they start at like 175, and then mid levels like 255, and they go up to mid 350s on the lake.
Sure. Which is incredibly reasonable for what home prices are up here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we're working with the state on some programs to help with if people qualify for some down payment, things like that. And it's really been fun. And on one hand,
and challenging.
we have a really good team working there. And on one hand, it's all about housing. On the other hand, it has nothing to do about housing.
Right.
It's all about building community. And if we do it right, we want to encourage people. So we have gatherings, potlucks, different things, and eventually we want to have some classes in optional classes in financial, helping
literacy,
people, financial literacy.
Yeah.
Maybe how do you build strong marriages? Maybe how do you raise resilient kids? There's a lot of challenges schools are having, and how do you give back to the community? That's where we get real purpose in life. Giving back to our kids, our families, giving back to the community. If done right, we won't be able to keep people out of communities like this. And if done right, maybe we can encourage not only this community, but other communities to do a similar program.
Yeah, kind of to build a similar platform or kind of a blueprint.
Yeah.
And put it somewhere else. How far are you along in that project?
So we've been open almost a year, not quite a year. We've got probably 17. We've got about 7 already moved in, living there. We've got a total of 17 committed to in process. We just got to complete them. And our goal is to add 20 to 25 homes a year.
That's built. That's homes that are built in that community.
Built and people moved in.
That's a great goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So behind the scenes, my brother and I, Jim, have been working on the background, and now the next generation will take the next 5-6 years to build it out.
If a giraffe drinks coffee, that by the time the coffee gets to its stomach, it's already cold. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
That's because you're too busy working on Pine Pond.
That's good.
Keeping you busy, Ben. Well, hey, is there anything else you want to talk about? This has been a phenomenal conversation.
Well, Okay, so if someone were to ask, Ben, is there one thing that you can look back in your career and say, encourage someone else to do? I would say this. When I was mid-career, I went to a Promise Keeper event. Some of the guys will know what that is. It was 100,000 guys at Silverdome and challenged spiritually in different ways. And I was challenged to do prayer walking. If I would say there's one habit that I've developed that has helped me more than anything, they challenged us to do prayer walk. Take the Lord's Prayer, and it's real easy to sit at the table and you go to sleep before you get to the end almost. So I would walk and I'd pray through the Lord's Prayer and take each segment and personalize it. You go through worship. You go through 5 things. It starts and ends with worship, which is very crucial. There's 3 things in the middle. Provision, you pray about work. It goes through confession. God, I screw up.
Right.
Every one of us do. And then it goes about guidance, lead us the right way. And then you end with worship again. And I'm telling you, for 10 years, I did that almost every day. I don't think I missed a day, 5 days a week. Throw my briefcase in the truck, go on my walk, and then jump in and go to work. And it's God's given me insight into our marriage, into our kids, into negotiations at work. That, and then I'd read this little book, only has 31 chapters, written by the wisest person who's ever lived. It's called the Book of Proverbs.
Yep.
And it's just wisdom, learning wisdom. Wisdom, don't chase money. It's so elusive. Chase wisdom. Money is a byproduct of doing things
the proper way.
Proper way.
Yep.
So don't chase it. Chase wisdom. Learn wisdom. And this book's full of wisdom.
You had showed me a little book today. Did you have that? What is that?
Well, this morning I was at breakfast with a friend who's one of the leaders at the Bay Harbor Chapel. And he says, I got something for you. I said, what is it? And he said, it's called Plus Nothing. It's just a little book, Plus Nothing. This is all you need right here. This plus nothing. I said, what is it? It's actually, as I open it up, it's the 4 gospel books, but it's written as one story. Instead of 4
separate
views,
stories. Right.
They put it together, and it's kind of Jesus plus nothing. That's all you need when you really understand it.
Well, Ben, thank you so much for your time today. I hope people really find a lot of value in this conversation.
Yeah. No, thank you. Michael, you're one of my heroes. When I grow up, I want to be just like you.
Well, thank you, Ben. Your friendship,
even though I'm twice your age,
your friendship was very important to me. So I appreciate you sitting down and sharing a little bit about your life and history and your walk with God. It's been good stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
So I wish you the best this week, and thank you so much for your time here.
All right. Thank you, Michael.